So A World of Books is an online learning and support platform driven by the mandate to give the gift of reading through research and evidence-based instruction. We are deeply passionate about helping struggling readers achieve their highest potential. It is our belief that every student has the potential to succeed once they are taught the way they learn. That is the basis in which we approach every one of our projects, whether it is teaching our students or whether it is educating the public on matters related to literacy. Today, we are going through the world of how the brain learns to read, and I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible because there's a lot of science behind it, but I'm breaking it down as simple as possible because simple is better. All the information in this presentation today, most of it is sourced from this particular book, which you would have received in your resource package. This book was written by a French neurosurgeon, neuroscientist, who decided to discover, or is his mission to discover, how we read and the science behind it. I do recommend that when you have some time to read it. It is very informative and life-changing. You would discover a lot of information that will make you think. While you're reading it, you're going to try to figure out how you are reading the book because you're trying to figure out how your brain is working in this process. So today we're going to explore how the brain learns to read, the impact of the reading process, and what it takes to become a better reader. Before we begin, in terms of diving into the presentation, I am going to read some information from a recent article published in 2019 by CNN. It's talking about a new study which found, through the study of brain scans, children ages 3 to 5 who are constantly using their screens. They found that the key part of their brain, which is responsible for language, literacy, and cognitive skills, is underdeveloped. Right now, following COVID and the way our kids are totally online and are dependent on screens from a very young age, their brain is being affected because it's not developing the way it's supposed to naturally develop. Which brings us to our first set of information here. The cognitive milestones of a child deals with how their brain develops. First, they start to pay attention to faces. Then they start to respond to certain emotions. They can tell you whether they're happy or they're sad. They start talking about showing you what they want. They want things nearby. They tend to be very curious, etc. All of these things is the brain developing on its own. This is the natural part of the brain development. The brain was meant to develop this way. It doesn't need to learn how to do this. This is natural cognitive developmental skills. So a child, whether or not you teach them about the environment around them, they're going to learn the environment around them through their natural ability to interact with the things in their space. Same goes for their speech and language milestones. When a baby is about 6 weeks, he starts to make loud noises. So they start to scream. They like hearing the sound of their voice. Whether they're making any sense at all, they love hearing the sense of their voice. Then they begin to babble and cry when they need things. Again, these are parts of their natural development. They don't need to be told or taught how to do this. All the way up to 6 months where they start speaking. They may say things like dada or mama, mama, stuff like that. They start to recognize the world around them through speech. This is all natural. So the question that scientists are asking, if you talk to a baby, if you surround the baby with books and you read to a baby, would that baby know how to read? Or would reading become natural? We were never born to read. Our brains were not developed to read. That is a taught process. The brain is not wired to read naturally, and it needs to be trained to read. Therefore, teachers and parents, as our first teachers, and neurosurgeons, you all are responsible for creating brains to work in our society. Unlike spoken language acquisition, meaning knowing how to talk, our brain is not biologically prepared to read. As neurosurgeons, we must be aware of the reading steps needed at the phonological and visual level to ensure readers master the skill of reading. You're going to hear some key phrases throughout this presentation: phonological awareness, phonics. Those are the two main things that is needed at the foundational level to be a neurosurgeon responsible for formatting a brain to read. So how does it start? We learn to read from speech to print, and all of this happens in the left side of the brain. We learn sounds, and then we see sounds associated with symbols, letters, and then we are able to read those symbols, letters, and create words. So let's get into some science. I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. So the brain is made up of several parts. However, the reading brain is focused on 4 essential sections. The front part, the frontal lobe, is responsible for processing speech. This orange part here, the temporal lobe, is responsible for language comprehension. The back of your brain, this is where you get your critical for reading fluency. And this part to the top here is where your sensory processing happens. So all of this works together to produce reading, and we'll see how. So first up, to the front of your brain where your eyes are, this is where phonological processing happens. You hear words, you hear sounds. Someone tells you the word bat. That comes into your brain from here. Then you acquire meaning. You understand what a bat is. You may be able to sum up that a bat can be an object or an animal. So you know bat and you assign a meaning to it. Then there's a part of the brain all the way to the back here, which is called the brain's letterbox. So aside from knowing the word, understanding what you heard, bat, assigning a meaning, now you have to probably write or read this word. This is where the letters come in. The symbols associated with the word bat, B-A-T. This part of the brain is responsible for learning what a B is, what it looks like, what a A is, what a T is, and then seeing all of those letters together. And this is where the magic begins. So the word comes in, you have the letters inside there, you know, okay, this is what I have to write. But can I say the word bat? I heard it, I know what it means, I know the letters related to it. Can I now reproduce that word bat? All of that happens in this section here called the angular gyrus. This is responsible for our phonological awareness. That's where phonics takes place. And they all work together in this arc called please excuse me, I'm going to butcher this word and I'm very sorry, but it's the arcuate fasciculus. This is the arch in which reading occurs. All of these parts of the brain work together to produce something that literally is instant. think about this presentation. You are understanding all the words I'm saying. You are able, except for those that I'm probably, but the one I just butchered, but you are understanding all the words that I'm saying automatically. The whole idea of reading is that you'll be able to do this automatically. Why is all of this important? Because a struggling reader, a child in your class or a child in your family, etc., if that part of their brain is not developed, they're not going to be able to read. If this part of the brain, the brain's letterbox, the angular gyrus, and the arch that is created during this process, if that is not developed, we don't get reading. This is an MRI that was taken on a struggling reader and a strong reader. It distinctly shows that the entire action at the back of the brain is not occurring. When your child is struggling in your classroom or in your home with reading, it's not naturally his fault or her fault. His brain was not developed to read, and the foundation needed to produce that skill is not there. This is another representation of the exact same thing, where we have the processing. We hear the word and it goes into the where phonologically phonics occurs, and something that we're going to deal with just now called orthographic processing. So this is neurosurgeons at work. This is what our teachers and our parents are doing when they read to kids and when they're involved in the reading process. You hear the word bird, you understand what it is, you can produce the word bird in your mind, and then you learn how to spell that word. You know the rules that goes towards spelling that word or pronouncing that word. You know IR is pronounced a particular way. This is the reading process. How do we get there? It begins with the pictorial stage. This is where kids are now learning the world around them. You show them a picture of an apple and they'll be able to recognize that it's an apple. You may have a child in your presence where they are walking down the road or they're driving past a fast food outlet and they will say the word KFC, they will say the word Royal Castle or McDonald's. They are not necessarily reading it. They are reading the symbols around them. They don't actually know the letters involved in the words. They don't know the words. They are just associating pictures with meaning. The first stage, picture, meaning. Then that builds on the phonological stage. The phonological stage is where you match grapheme to phoneme. A grapheme refers to the visual representation of the sounds you hear. So you hear the sound A, and the grapheme would be A, the symbol for A. A phoneme refers to the sound of the letters. So that's the A. Matching these two creates phonics. This is where phonics begins. Ch, CH makes one sound ch, AY makes one sound A. This is important because of spelling later on in their life, right? In their process. But the second stage is the ability to know what an A looks like and the sound that it makes. Orthographic mapping, or the orthographic stage. This part is crucial to the reading process because it deals with the part of the brain, your letterbox, where all your information on letters is stored, and it gives you the fluency you need for reading. So this stage talks about something we like to call sight words. Most teachers have a list of sight words that are just random. It seems random. And that is the problem. It's too random. There is a better way to teach it, and it is following the phonological awareness and phonics pattern where instead of just teaching the word the, or instead of just teaching the word said, you teach phonics related to this word. So for example, a student would know TH makes the th sound. All he has to now learn is the fact that this E is not following the rules of the sound of E. This helps with spelling, this helps with fluency. Same thing for the word said. When you tell a student the word said, or they see the word said, they're stumped. If you ask them to spell the word said, it's S-E-D. There's an approach called the heart words approach, where you're only learning parts of the word because every other part of the word follows phonics or phonological awareness that you already know. So if we break up the word said, what is the first sound you're hearing? S. I know that sound. I know the letter associated with that sound. What's the last sound you're hearing? D. I know that sound. I know the letter. The sound in the middle sounds weird. It's not, it's eh. The sound I know for eh is E. All I have to focus on now is knowing that that's not the sound, it's AI. Do I know the sound AI? Yes, I do know those two letters. They make the A sound, not here. So it breaks down the rules so that children could actually learn and break up a word as opposed to guessing the word or just rote remembering the word. Why is that important? Because when they come across bigger words that they have to break up in parts of their life, the higher stages of their life, they know how to approach it. So they have those skills. And this long list of words don't feel like I need to memorize all these words. I could actually apply skills that I know to new words. And that is what orthographic mapping is about. All of this ties into, is needed for a mathematical equation of reading. Reading is word recognition multiplied by language comprehension, and it's equal to reading comprehension, which is the goal of reading. The purpose of you reading a piece of information is to understand what you've read. How do you get there? You need phonological awareness, meaning you need to know the sound of letters. You need phonics, meaning you need to match the sound of letters together with their graphemes. You need fluency. When you know how these things work, you are able to read at a faster pace without hesitation. That's word recognition. Multiply by language comprehension. Language comprehension deals with what falls under language arts or grammar. It deals with knowing how to do comprehension as a skill. It deals with vocabulary and language concepts such as your metaphors and your similes. And it deals with communication in general, meaning how I actually communicate in reading. So for example, what do I say or how do I read if there's a question mark at the end of a sentence or an exclamation mark? That adds to understanding. If I hear the sentence, what are you doing? And somebody just read it flat. I don't know, I may not know it's a question. I may not understand the context in which this is being said. So I don't get meaning. If I know this question mark means that I'm supposed to, it's a question, meaning somebody is inquiring what's happening, I could now understand, I could now assign meaning to that. So let's dive into the simple view a little more. This is something called Scabrow's reading rope. It was developed in 2001, and it is still relevant today because it's necessary to produce a very strong reading skill. It begins with something that I don't think many people may realize is very important, and that's the concept of background knowledge. When we talk about background knowledge, we talk about your natural knowledge base. If a child is interested in space, he is going to be researching everything about space. He's going to tell you everything about the planets and the Milky Ways and the stars. He knows it inside out. So if he gets a passage or something to read related to space, He's not confused at certain terminology. He knows it. He may not know what the passage is talking about right now because he needs to read it, but it won't seem so strange when he's actually reading it for the first time. Background knowledge is important because not every time you're going to get a passage that is easily understood. Currently, in my tutoring practice, I'm realizing that most students don't have a big background knowledge to fall back on. So topics that are what adults or teachers may seem as common is totally alien to them. And they are unable to infer or come to conclusions because they don't know what they're reading about. And that is why background knowledge is important. How do you achieve background knowledge? You introduce your students or your children to a wealth of information. Not just cartoons on television, not just the random YouTube videos about people doing games or anything like that. You give them knowledge. You show them documentaries, you show them history, you show them culture. That's how their background knowledge is developed. Once you have a good, strong background knowledge, that is built with your vocabulary. Vocabulary happens in two instances. One, where it's natural, meaning it's your day-to-day expression of words. It's your word bank that you use daily. Then you have your more structured vocabulary, which is topic specific. It is learned. A good example of this is our dialect or any dialect. Nobody has sat down anybody and spoken about our dialect and say, you know what, when you're in this situation, this is the words you use. We pick it up. We pick it up through our interactions, through overhearing people. We've picked it up everywhere and every day in our life. So when a conversation is happening and a word is used, you automatically know what it means. That is our natural vocabulary. Our specific vocabulary deals with things like, for instance, going back to the space background knowledge, specific words related to space things that you would have had to learn. Vocabulary is built when you speak to your child, when you use words with your children, the way in which you communicate with your children, not just in the classroom, but at home. The type of words you use at home is the same type of words they are going to be repeating. Children are like sponges, they pick up everything. So if you have a rich vocabulary within your home or in the classroom, they will have a rich vocabulary. Language structure, verbal reasoning, and literacy knowledge, all of this falls under grammar skills or language arts. This is where we start to talk about sentence construction, metaphors and similes, and different types of literature, genres. All of that is needed to get through the reading process. Now, none of this is actually possible on its own without the ability to have proper phonological awareness, decoding skills, meaning you're able to see a word, break up a word, and then put it back together. B-A-T, that's what you're seeing. B-at, bat. You understand what that means, you've decoded that word, and you could reproduce it. And sight recognition, meaning you are able to automatically read certain words as our sight words. Add all of this together, and you get reading. So reading is not just simply looking at a book and absorbing the words on the pages. It requires all of this information and skills. And this is not natural. So let's break this down. This happens in less than a second. You hear the word, you know the letters in the word, you're able to produce the meaning, and you're able to recall the word. This is the reading triangle. And this is how we process reading. You see it, it is literally in a second. Children who don't have strong phonology don't do this activity automatically. And then you end up having a child that is not reading fluently and is struggling with just finishing one word, far less for a sentence. So how do we get this to be automatic? You start with phonological awareness. You build on phonics. Then you work with vocabulary. That increases your fluency, and then you get comprehension. This is your reading program. Most schools, unfortunately, don't have this structure meshed together. And that's the problem. Do they have phonics? Yes, they do. They're going to tell you, these are the letters, these are the sounds that they make, go learn these words, and they may come for spelling. But it's not actually matched to vocabulary. It's not matched to fluency. So for example, if I do the letter, the long A sound, and I'm working on AI, following this pattern, we start with AI makes the sound A. The phonics behind it is that AI, it's one sound. There are two letters, but they make one sound. They are normally found in the middle of a word when you hear the long A sound. Vocabulary, here's a list of words and their uses with AI. Fluency, we have a passage that has these lists of words that we did in vocabulary that had the phonics AI in it. And then you read that passage. You highlight the words that have the AI sound in it. You may even find a word that has AI, but it's not giving the AI sound, as said. Do I underline that word? No, because it's not following the rule. Do I circle it? Yes, because it's a rule breaker. And then I comprehend what I read. It needs to be done together. Outside of that, when the AI word is presented in a comprehension passage, they're not going to know how to approach it. They're going to behave as if they've never seen it before. And we do get that. You do have situations where you teach phonics and you're like, right, I did the phonics lessons, great. Why are you not reading the passage? But you know this word. We just did it in phonics. You're not matching the word in this, you're not using the word in this format to concrete that thing that we talked about in terms of orthographic mapping. All of this is going to make sure that it becomes automatic in the student's mind. So this is basically your lesson plan. When you're thinking about teaching reading or approaching reading with whether you are doing it from home or in the classroom, it needs to have these elements. It needs to start with memory of letters, whether you are reading them or writing them. You need to have the sound of letters, and you need to have the meaning of the words that are related to these sounds and the context in which they are used, which is backed by background knowledge. Why is all of this dreadfully important? This is based on US-based statistics. However, it is very relevant to our society as well. The green section tells us 5 to 10% of our students learn to read without effort. They are your golden children in your class. You have no problem with them at all. That's great, lovely, no problem. 35%, they're not automatic, but they're not troublesome. They're okay. I'll just need to probably do it 1 or 2 times and then they'll get it. But I don't need specific instruction. Down at the bottom, 10 to 15% need special attention. In this area, you get students that are probably on the dyslexic spectrum or may have a literacy disability. However, 40 to 45%, which is making up the majority of your classroom, this is not an automatic system. This is not an easy process. Reading, writing, and spelling requires specific instruction. The specific instruction goes back to our elements of reading. It needs to involve phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. It needs that. 40 to 45% of our students need a structured literacy approach. Learning to read is the process of acquiring the several types of statistical knowledge that support rapid and efficient comprehension, starting with phonological structure, orthographic structure, and the mapping between the two, coupled with vocabulary and grammar. Once you do that, you have achieved success. Your surgery as a neurosurgeon was successful. Reading can be learned only because the brain's plastic design, and when reading takes place, that individual brain is forever changed. It's forever changed. As a neuroscientist or neurosurgeon, you are responsible for shaping the brain of the students in your care. That's a very, very, very important and delicate task. If you are unable to mold that brain to read, their life is forever changed. If you are able to mold that brain to read, their life is equally forever changed. As teachers and parents, we are responsible for the students in our care. If we don't give them the foundation that they need, we are setting them up for a changed life that it may not be successful. So how do we build a reader? Read, 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 read. Read to your child every day. Whether it is 5 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, you read with them and to them every day. Why is this important? The first level of reading, or the first level of formatting that brain, comes from speech. So we need to get that speech going. You need to introduce them to vocabulary that is expressive, meaning natural. It's in their home environment. It's in their environment and not learned. This is where it starts. Read with them every day. Provide structured instruction. This is what we've been talking about, where you incorporate the elements of reading: phonological awareness, phonics, vocabulary, fluency, and comprehension. Make reading fun. Nobody likes to read, probably except me. Plenty of people think reading is a task. It can be boring. It's not exciting. It feels like a chore. But if you make reading fun, you make it engaging, you match it with things that children enjoy, not just what they read, but how they read it. You make it into a theater, you make it into a play, you add a creative element where you probably match it with some form of craft or painting, so that reading does not become something that they run away from. You make it encouraging, inviting, you make it fun. Most importantly, you make reading a priority. Reading does not just happen because you have homework. Reading is not limited to textbooks. When a child sees their parent and their teachers reading, they are encouraged to read. Give books as rewards. Have books in your classroom. Surround them with books, because books become something that they see all the time. Why is that important? If you are if it's in your environment, you may gravitate to it. Use topics that they enjoy. If a child likes science, surround them with science books. Discuss books. Have book clubs are very, very, very interesting. Have a book club with your child. They don't need to have a grand big book club with other people, but you all could read a book together and then have a discussion about that book. All of these things make reading the priority. So although they may be struggling, reading does not feel too much of a task. So expose them to books, read to them, and provide structured literacy instruction. So at the beginning, we asked, if you talk to the baby, you surround the baby with books, and you read to baby, what they read, would they learn to read? The answer is twofold, yes, because these are where it starts. You need to provide speech, you need to provide the interest in books, and then you need to show them that reading is important by reading to them. So if you have a baby in your life, this is their starting ground. Even if you don't have a baby in your life and you have a grown child, this is also your starting ground. You talk to your child about books, you surround your child with books, and you read to them. This is the beginning stages of your neurosurgery. To help, we do offer several book-related activities. We have our theme boxes and our monthly box subscription. You can contact us for more information on this. And as we come to the end of our session, we invite you to note that we do have 2 more upcoming sessions for the year, our Understanding the Science of Reading and Understanding Structured Literacy. Structured literacy is what we've been talking about today, meaning that it focuses on a structured way in which reading is taught. The science of reading builds on the reading brain, where it goes more in depth into the reading process. So both of these are carded for July and August coming up. And as members of our group, A World of Books, you would have received the first copy or the first access to our new publication, Exploring Literacy. It is a publication that is designed to help bring literacy to the forefront, where our goal is to create a network of literacy professionals. We are trying to educate the public as best as we can on things literacy related, not just in terms of disabilities, but related to how do you help, what is involved in literacy? How do you read? How do you help someone to read? Stuff like that. And this is our first publication. We are very excited about it, and we do encourage you to read it. It has some information in there about the reading brain. This month, today is also World Autistic Awareness Day and month has begun. And just like our passion for dyslexia, autism is also up there on the list. So we will be examining stuff related to autism. I do thank you for your time and your patience today. And I do hope you have a better understanding of how the brain learns to read. And if you have any questions, we are here to help. So I will leave the floor open now if you have any questions.